Hello everyone, welcome back to the Late to the Game channel, but if you're new here, welcome to the Late to the Game channel. I'm Ellie and you can find me at Elementally on everything, and with me as always I have...
It's Ned. Hello.
Ned! And today we have a very big topic because it is, what, like 6 years down the barrel that we've been talking about?
We've been a while waiting to play this one. If you're watching the video, you might get a clue.
A little hint.
As to the game that we'll be talking about today.
For the eagle-eyed among you. But before we get into that, what have you been up to?
It's been a while since we recorded a show.
It has. There's been travels and COVID.
For sure. And I think the last time that we talked, I was playing a lot of Marvel Snap. That has slowed down a little bit. I was playing Lawnmower Simulator.
Yes.
And Alan Wake 1, which I have given up on.
Yes. Almost immediately after that episode, that was dropped.
Yeah, and I'm like, Alan Wake 2 is just after releasing in the last couple of days.
Oh, that looks so good.
Has such good reviews. It seems to be like of the quality of Control, and I'm really excited about it. But I think I'm done with Alan Wake 1.
That's fair.
We'll too many good games out there to play, and I can't keep up with them all. So
no. And especially not old games that are horrendous saving situations. Like, you just can't compete with that.
No.
It's a way in which the new games have made us all princesses, I think. And that's fine. We can all be princesses.
That's okay. I want to be a princess. I want to be a gaming princess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've really just been playing with you lately, actually.
Yes.
We've been doing some big gaming lately, some big games to talk about. And we'll be talking about more of them on the show over the next while. I won't give away the big topic of this show, although the title of the podcast probably will give that away.
Yes, you will know already.
But we've been playing a lot of Tiny Tina together lately.
Which we are reserving, honestly, for its own episode completely, because what a game.
We've been really enjoying it. I've loved all the Border games, the Borderlands games. So I think I knew that I was going to like Tiny Tina, and it's been a great palate cleanser for what we've been playing already. And I think we'll talk about palate cleansers in a future episode too. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Just playing with you. So I suppose let's get into it. What is the game that you have been playing?
So everyone, you will be relieved to know that I have played The Last of Us. I've played part 1. I haven't played part 2 because, my God, what a game. And it deserves time to breathe and to marinate in my brain. But just like bullet points of how exceptional I thought this game was. Like, one, I loved the stealth mechanics in the end. I was afraid that stealth games freak me out because I always imagine that, like, I'm infinitely weaker than whatever I'm going up against, which is ultimately true in this game.
That's the goal, right?
But you feel pretty empowered throughout it because I think largely because you're Joel, and they do really important power shifts throughout the game to show you how different it could be if you weren't someone who's essentially trained to be a killer for 20 years, you know, and like. God, the emotional gravity of everything that they attacked in that game, like the unwilling but eventual, like, inevitable coming together of Ellie and Joel was so impactful, and that like father-daughter connection that was just like there's so much that was so beautiful at this game that, like, that's already been said, of course, but
and that's the beauty of Late to the Game, right? We get to say these things again, but in retrospect, I mean, a lot of things have happened in the world since that game came out. We've had a real life pandemic. Yes. I mean, it hasn't been.
It hasn't had bloaters,
clearly,
but
resulting in a zombie apocalypse, but was a major thing that's happened between the release of that first game and the second game. Actually, the second game released, I think, a couple of months into the pandemic.
And then they got to release the show in 2023 when all the events take place. Like, I just think that's crazy. I think the timeline of this game is like kismet. I think the world needed this game and obviously part 2. But
that's one of the things that I love about what we do, talking about games like this years later, is that we can bring a totally different context as reviewers of a game. Not that we really review, but as people who are, talking about games years later, you know, when those original reviews came out for the first game, they hadn't lived through a pandemic. They didn't know
they didn't
what
have any
2023
context
was
for
going
that.
to look like. So,
Which makes the build of it all the more impressive as well. Like, I think one of the things that was my first observation with playing the game was how unbelievably true to humanity it is. Like, it's so easy to find like a dystopian fiction or a post-apocalyptic fiction where it's like, you know, it's so like romanticized and glorified in different ways. And like this was a very gritty and believable telling, I think, of a story of being 20 years down the line of an apocalypse where they've tried to put back infrastructure. They've tried to put back, you know, school systems and how that looks, and it's much more militaristic. And my God, in America, of course, that's exactly how school systems would look after an apocalypse. And so there were so many just human and gross practicalities that just came right back in, and that like capitalism fucking shined in its own way upon re-entry of human life and society. I don't know, it's just, I thought they just managed to find like every truth about humanity in how we would rebuild.
I do think that it's, I think it's true within its own world. I think a lot of the individual characters that you're following, you can understand all of their choices and it makes sense and they are very human. However, I would, and generally I'm more of an optimist anyway. I do think it's a pretty pessimistic look at what at how humanity would react to something like that. I you know, we've seen terrible stories, and this is coming back to kind of like the pandemic that we've now lived through. We've seen sort of that, you know, stories about misinformation and about politics getting involved, but we also seen some amazing stories of humans doing the best of things, and
for sure,
humanity coming together and humanity developing a vaccine within months of a pandemic.
Yeah, I do think maybe we underestimated ourselves in the development of the game, that in 20 years they still haven't discovered a vaccine. It's obviously a totally different
It's
ball
not
game.
even the medical advances. It's just the humanity of it all. I hear exactly what you're saying. I do think that within the characters, I think the characters are very human, but the overall plot, I think, is a little on the pessimistic side for humanity. I think humanity would come together a little bit more.
My counterpoint to that then is that, like, one, and we'll get into this a little bit more. Your lens, your vehicle through the game is Joel.
Yeah.
And Joel is through and through a pessimist. He's been through so much shit. He only makes wrong decisions, except when it comes to like literal survival. You know, like he's faced with we're not faced with a lot of decisions throughout the game, but almost every time, and a very big one, he makes the wrong choice. You know, and so I think that's probably like, it feeds into things that you and I really believe in, which is that like your mindset determines your world.
I guess in that world, what is the wrong choice? Yeah. You know, like you're in a world where you said it yourself, he makes the right choices for survival. Well, in that world that they're painting, is there anything else but survival? Yeah. I think, you know, and we don't, there's 20 years of decisions there that we don't know about that were clearly probably pretty horrible decisions.
The smuggler decisions.
Yeah. You know, I'd love to find out more about Joel's 20 years leading up to that moment. Maybe not in a game or anything like that, but I would like to. I would like to know more about Joel's 20-year journey from his daughter dying until we meet him in The Last of Us.
Yeah, and I think so. To bring another bullet point into it, like one of the things that I find so impactful, and you bringing up his daughter made me think of this, was the way they handled like symbology. Like there were a lot of moments where lighting was really important, or the parallels between scenes were really important. Like these are really obvious ones. So like in the beginning of the game, you start, like essentially the beginning of the game is starting and you're holding Sarah and you're completely powerless and you can't do anything, even though Joel is going to be the powerhouse for the rest of the game for you. And then at the end of the game, you're completely powerless with this little girl in your arms for a totally different reason. Oh, it's so beautifully done to have those emotional parallels.
You know, and I've played this game 3 times, and now I've
Watched an entire
so
playthrough.
a 4 playthrough.
Yeah.
It seems crazy in hindsight, but I didn't notice that. I didn't see that parallel between
Really?
having your daughter in your arms, and then what's the daughter's name again?
Sarah?
Between Sarah, and it seems crazy, and everyone's probably gone, it was so obvious, but I missed that parallel. Yeah, it is very strong.
Oh, it's just so beautiful, because like they Naughty Dog, in the development of it all, they managed to do certain things that were like very, very on the nose, but still like tasteful, you know? And so I think like certain moments, and like this is echoed in the show, and we're going to talk about the show as well, but certain moments, it's like, who's in the light right now? Who is in the light in this scene? And that kind of like, if you don't know to look for it, you're just looking, and you just automatically, your brain is forming these connotations and these judgments on like, who is right in this situation? Who's in the moral ambiguity part of this situation? Who is thoroughly in the dark?
Well,
and you know,
speaking about moral ambiguity, then like
it's moral ambiguity, the game.
Talking about the end of the game, and
yeah.
I'm guessing that anyone that's listened this far, we're totally okay with spoilers.
Yes.
You're faced, well, not your face. You aren't faced with a choice.
No, there's no
Most
choice.
games would give the player a choice. This game doesn't.
Love that they didn't.
Joel takes the choice for himself. The character takes the choice, where he, as everyone knows, bursts into the operating theater and, in my case and in most of the cases I've seen, shoots the doctor. But you knife the doctor.
I didn't have any. I went.
You just walked up close to them.
No, like I didn't have any weapons in my hands when I went in there. Like
Okay.
I was fully going in. I was like, I'm gonna rip Ellie out of this machine, whatever happens, and then I'm going to run away. Like I had
no idea that he was going to do this?
he was going to murder the doctor, and I had no intentions to ever murder him myself. Like I didn't want that to be the next step, because I think that's way too fucking far. Like in this world, like the doctor, they also made a point of making this man like in his 50s, maybe 60s. And so like the level of medical education and practice that man would have had pre-apocalypse is invaluable. Like killing him would not have, like, because I was trying to explain this to Ned a lot, like, because I was very much like, fuck everyone, I'm getting Ellie and I'm getting out of here. Like, that was my goal completely. But I also thought me and Joel were on the same page. I thought it was going to be like we're getting her out of here so that we have a means to negotiate, so that we can talk and be like, this is not the way we're doing it. You're spending more time, and we're going to figure out a safe way to keep her alive and develop the vaccine.
And it's
but he did not have that.
It's that usual Naughty Dog thing of, in Uncharted games are the same. Yes, you kill lots of people on your way to the goal, but
one of them is worse.
Are they narratively dead or not? No, it's that's just the gameplay.
Yeah.
But killing someone in a scene like that it feels like actual murder.
It was actual murder. And like even the nurses, like I remember, because I didn't press the button to kill him. Like you get close enough to the doctor and you kill him, you know? And one of the nurses actually called out, "You monster." And I was just, and it put into like perspective that I was like, I just stole the future from this planet potentially.
Yeah. And I mean, and it is potentially, right?
Yeah, because we don't know. We don't know if there's anyone else like Ellie. We don't know how many other doctors there are.
Right.
We don't even know if that would have successfully gotten the cordyceps.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the moral ambiguity of it is well written, and what I was saying to you, I think if you're in Marlene's shoes, Marlene, the head of the Fireflies, who has orchestrated getting Ellie here in the first place for this moment, if you're in Marlene's shoes, you probably choose to do what Marlene's doing.
Absolutely,
it's terrible and it's horrible, but you would probably choose to do that. In Joel's shoes, you're probably going to do what Joel is doing.
The character creation is so thorough.
The one person that isn't given a choice in any of it is Ellie.
Yeah, and we know what choice she would make.
That's what puts the final sort of straw for me when it comes to, did Joel make the right choice or not? Yeah. He didn't. No. I'm pretty, I fall pretty clearly on one side of this. Mm-hmm. He didn't, because he knows that Ellie wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, and he had a chance, when they were at the base, to come clean to her, and she asked, and she was like, she basically was like, I'm gonna ask one more time, is like what you told me the truth. And he swore like and you could see because the acting is so good because Troy Baker's a genius. And
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the acting in a moment.
Tell me her name. Is it
Ashley Johnson?
Yes.
Look it up anyway, though.
So because Troy Baker is so good and Ashley Johnson is absurdly good, I like that you get a moment in the mocap and in the performance to actually see like Joel hesitates and Ellie is so smart. She absolutely saw it, but at the end of the day, she is a child. She wants to believe it. Like she wants to believe that she didn't need to be sacrificed. You know, like that'd be so scary. She's so brave for the entire game, but to willingly actually just die. Like,
well, that's interesting because I read slightly different into it. I do think that she also, underneath it all, at the end of that game, knows that it's not the truth. But I'm not sure that she's swallowing that at the end of the game because she wanted to live. I think she's swallowing that because she wants Joel to be the man that she wants him to be. I think she wants him to be. I think a little bit of both of those can be true. Probably a little bit of both.
Because like she's a baby, you know, she's 14, and like. I think like she would want to believe that it could just be easy, that it could just be done, you know, because everything in her life has been so hard.
So the acting in it, the acting is so far beyond what the acting in most games to this date.
I'm blown away by Troy Baker.
Troy Baker's so good.
Because
we've always been Troy Baker fans,
absolutely.
but that's your first time actually seeing his major role.
I've been introduced to Troy Baker in lots of different roles where he is. I mean, I don't know that Troy Baker is ever one of those actors where he's like, well, I'm Troy Baker, so I'm always the same. Like, I think he is a very well-rounded actor. Like, say what you want about however he comes off in interviews. Like, I get it, but I think because I'm a musician, I'm able to see through that.
For sure.
Like, you and I have been in that realm, and we're like, I know what the facade is, okay?
Yeah.
But Troy Baker, like, I didn't even recognize him. Like, he was speaking, and I was like, I know objectively that this is Troy Baker's most famous role, and I can't hear it.
So good. So good.
Like,
and the voice direction in the whole game is excellent. Because there are games, we've talked about this recently, Final Fantasy 16 maybe being an example, where the voice acting itself is pretty good, but the editing of it and the direction seems strange. The actual connection between the animation and the voice acting doesn't seem to be well done. In Last of Us, it's perfect all the way through. Ashley Johnson would have been quite young doing this role.
I think she was like 16 or 17, right?
Just amazing.
Or, no, she was around 18. I think
it's such an amazing portrayal of Ellie.
She's so like this is every character is well realized. Like from as small a part as Marlene is, you know exactly who that woman is. You know what she's been through. You know her moral code. You know like where her moral ambiguity lies. And what we get like a cumulative like hour with her at most. And then like we spend the entire game with Joel and Ellie, and you know exactly who they are. And like Tess is so well realized. And like I'm just every person is a person in the game. And I think the only one that maybe strays into not necessarily like being I think the only one that I would think about that is Bill. And they fixed that.
They went hard at rectifying that in the TV series.
And we'll talk about that at the end, but they go very, very hard at fixing that story, and it's like the best thing I've maybe ever seen on TV.
I'm not sure that Bill's story is far better realized, I think, in the TV show, but I'm not sure that it needed to be fixed as such. I think his character in the game serves the purpose that it needs to serve. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about that later, though.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm trying to circle back to the original point that I was making, but about how all the characters are so well realized, and but like my God, Troy Baker's performance makes so much sense. Like, and as a man who has gone through life and experienced a lot of like, you know, whatever comes with being a human after a certain amount of time, whatever struggles that is, like, it just gives you different perspective on certain things and allows you to copy paste emotions into and insert emotions into different scenarios and be empathetic with different scenarios. But like Ashley Johnson was a baby performing as a baby in a wholly unrealistic, ungodly scenario. And her performance was like one of the most believable things that I've ever seen in a game. Like she was so thoroughly 14
Right.
and so clever, and like that beautiful naivety and bravery and like cunning that like a kid can have. Like kids see creative solutions. There's loads of studies to prove that like children see different solutions to things that adults literally don't, because they haven't been funneled into a certain perspective. They don't have those same pathways that we have, where we're like, no, this is the only way that you can come up with this solution. And so like it's proven that kids are creative problem solvers. And I feel like Ellie really encapsulated that in a lot of ways. And I think Ashley Johnson's performance is so impressive because she was so petulant and she was so brave and so vulnerable and so fucking smart through all of it. And like, oh my God, like her scene with Nolan North's character, David,
yeah.
My God. And like
speaking about characters or
that
voice
you don't
actors
expect.
that are doing very different roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I find her performance so impressive and so impactful. Like the game would be only half as good if she didn't deliver that way.
And I think one of the things to really take from the game and when it was made is that it was made during a time where characters or side characters like that are following you around are usually really annoying.
Yeah, useless as well.
Like useless, very annoying. Dialogue isn't particularly fun or helpful. And then Ellie comes along and she's like the perfect companion.
Yeah.
Like she's useful. She doesn't get in the way.
She's quippy,
She's
but not
quippy
in an annoying way.
She's quippy in a way that I certainly really like. And I've heard people saying since then, because there's been a lot of shows and movies that have come out that have quippy characters.
No, but it's not Marvel quip.
She's very charming and lovable in that.
Absolutely.
And, as a dad myself, like that's someone that you would want your daughter to be.
Yeah.
Maybe not murdering people, but
just slide past that.
That she is a charming person that you would want to look after in that scenario. So I think we've learned a lot about how companions can work in video games because of The Last of Us.
For sure.
I think Atreus in God of War is a direct result to that. To Ellie. I think he is the next level after Ellie. And games just generally do companions a lot better than they used to.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be even remotely surprised if there was a lot of people agreeing that this set the groundwork for that.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or laid the groundwork.
So, what a game.
What a game.
I'm really glad that you played. And to be clear, and everyone, if you're in the comments, Ellie has played the game itself, The Last of Us 1. Hasn't played the DLC yet.
Not yet.
Is about 3 episodes into the TV series, which we'll come to, and hasn't touched the sequel at all. And knows nothing about it. She's done a great job of keeping herself completely.
It's amazing how many spoilers I've managed to avoid with all of it.
So please don't mention anything in Discord or in the comments when you're reacting to the video.
I will kick you out of the Discord.
So,
I'm not kidding.
Normally at this point in the show, we talk about what else have we been doing. And what else have we been doing?
Watching The Last of Us! So, yes, The Last of Us TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was really excited for you to watch this. As you were playing through, because I haven't done a playthrough of the game since I've watched the TV series. So I was really excited to get to the point where we could start watching this together. It's so well done.
Like unbelievably well done. Like basically what happened was there was just one day where I'd spread my playthrough of The Last of Us over like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then there was like a day where I was like, I'll play the last 8 hours today. And then I finished it and I was like, it's not enough. It needs to be injected into my veins. And so then we like got dinner and then watched the show. And
so it was pretty much straight the same day. Finished the game, started the TV series.
I needed it because there was just like, and I can only imagine how it is at the end of the second game from what you've told me. Like I don't know any details of the second game. I just know that it hits hard. And like I felt emotionally raw after this game. And I know it's just like the first, I'm not going to look at him. I know it's just like the first step of many when it comes to the emotional ride that you go on and the emotional turmoil. And so like but I still just felt like this little bit of emptiness that I was like, fill with content, immediately fill with content. I cannot be left alone with these feelings. And my God, it does not fucking disappoint.
No, we're 3 episodes in so far. And so that means that we've got to the Bill episode. We've watched
Bill.
The Bill episode.
We're going to ramp up to that because, as I said earlier, I think that's one of the best pieces of television I've ever seen in my life.
It's really excellent, and it almost goes without being said how good it is. But yeah, I do think we should talk about some of the other things. One of the standout differences for me between the TV show and the game.
Is it Tess?
Tess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tess is so good.
Excellent.
She's so well realized.
She wasn't a poor character in the first game.
She
served the purpose really well and was very well acted. Actually, that actress died very recently. I can't think of her name, but she was excellent. She was really good. But the depth in the TV show and the way the actress that plays Tess is so good.
So good. Okay, yes. Sorry, I just had a moment of what I I need to talk about that later. Yeah. But Tess's character in the games, like you don't really have time to explore all of that with her because there's so much more game to explore. Yeah. And but I still found out like because it was the beginning of the game as well, and like the reason we've put it off so long was that like I required Ned to be sitting on the couch with me for the entire playthrough so that if I ever got scared, I could just throw the controller over at him. And I'm very proud to say that it was never that I was scared that I threw the controller at him. It was that I was frustrated.
Or just like, okay, I've had enough tension. I need 15-minute break, but I don't want to stop playing.
I need a breather, but I still want the story. But Tess, I found in the beginning of that game, I was like, save me. Be my shield. Protect me. Be the badass that I cannot be yet. And she served that purpose perfectly. And then in this show, I love just the emotional complexity that we got to that relationship. Like it was, revealed in however many levels of subtlety that like Joel never admitted to them being a couple, but they obviously were for a significant period of time, at least 15 years, I think, like 10 years, however the time stamping works. I think it was around 10 years or so.
It's 20 years.
I know that, but with Bill and their relationship, it was time stamped in that thing because they were like at the beginning of their relationship. But like the intimacy of just like she got beat into hell and back, and then she like got into bed with him, and it was just like he cuddled into her, and it was like this very tender, unconscious moment that was like the thing that happens in the dead of night, like the darkness, like nothing can see you. It's not something you have to acknowledge by the light of day. Like it is just this understood intimacy and protection and vulnerability between them, and that was such a beautiful touch to it all.
And they don't really change the dynamic
Not
from
at all.
what the game is, because in the game
Not
it's
at
like
all.
it's
They
an
just do more.
ambiguous relationship in the game, and it's kind of ambiguous. I mean, it's a little bit more realistic in the TV show. It's
But
hinted at that there's a little bit more, but he
at
keeps
an arm's
himself
distance.
at an arm's because he's probably done that with everyone.
Yeah.
It's really well, and she's just as much, if not more, of a badass in the TV
An
show.
unrelenting badass. Like
she's so tough.
So tough, but like she also, again, is a real fucking person, and the way she interacts with Ellie, I thought was really, really important, because like she, like there's this one specific moment that I remember calling out actually that as they were walking, Ellie was telling her about how she got bitten, and Tess was like, "You were in there all by yourself?" And Ellie lied, and I do know that she lied because I know what the DLC is about, even though I haven't played it yet. But she said, yeah, and Tess was like, "You're a badass chick," or something like that. But it was something that like, and of course, fucking Bella Ramsey, I will spend my life talking about how good of a performance she's already giving. But she took it in like a ridiculously and ruthlessly brave 14-year-old would, and she was so proud that this woman who is such a survivor just said that she was brave or that she was a badass, and like Tess knew what she was doing there. Like she 100% did. And there was just this moment of like human understanding and Tess just being really compassionate. And again, and I think I'm just gonna keep going, but one of the things that I really appreciated about the symbology in the show was something as simple as the lighting difference, like I talked about with the game. But there is a moment specifically, Ellie wakes up and she is the light in the darkness. She's being basically imprisoned in that light, but Tess is then in the middle between her and Joel is firmly in the dark, and she's literally in the gray area between them. And I just, it's obvious, but it is still like such a powerful and impactful.
You say it's obvious.
Visual.
It's not something that I picked up on until you pointed it out, and then it was obvious. And the thing is that as much of a badass, like to your point about this Tess being this kind of bridge between Ellie and Joel, like as much of a badass that Tess is, she's still the one that has to convince Joel and give an element of hope.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe that's selfish hope because she needs to feel that her life meant something.
Yeah, fair. Which is another human fucking pursuit, right?
But
Like
she
most
is the
human of
one
all.
that instills that little bit of hope in Joel that he needs to do this at least for what Tess was worth.
Yeah.
Joel would have never continued on this journey with Ellie if it wasn't for Tess's sacrifice and Tess's hope that he would do the right thing. Like Joel at that point, when he's moving off from the state building, doesn't have any hope of what Ellie is worth to the world. And it's certainly not for any love of Ellie at that point. It is purely to fulfill Tess's wishes, and reluctantly so at that point.
Yeah.
So she's a pivotal character in the entire story, and I'm just glad that we got to see more of her in the TV show. And by the time you get to Bill's episode, you see a little bit more of her.
Yeah.
It's only a small moment, but it's a really important
But it's something.
moment.
It builds so much more to her character. Like she was a bit cheeky, you know. She was challenging Joel at that time as well, and that's like it sees how they progressed in their relationship, like what they were founded upon.
But you got to see this like pre-pandemic,
yeah,
apocalypse world for a moment where she's sitting down and having a glass of wine with Frank, and they're having.
I mean,
their
it's not
own
pre-apocalypse; it's mid-apocalypse.
Well,
but
it's
a moment of clarity.
But you got to see what she was like pre-apocalypse.
I see. Yeah.
You got to see what Frank was like pre-apocalypse. They're just having this moment that is, a glimpse into who that character was in a normal world, where she's enjoying a glass of wine and two gay best friends.
Yeah, just means some friends. Yeah.
It's a really nice moment that obviously doesn't exist in the game.
Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed that little scene.
The other departure that they made from the game that I adored, even though it fucking horrified me, was Tessa's specific sacrifice. Like the way she goes out, and this was going to circle back to the moment I had earlier talking about the mouth things.
Yeah.
Oh,
that in
horrible.
itself is a huge change.
Huge, but I'm not there yet. So, so Tessa's sacrifice with her struggling with that lighter. Oh my God, that made me so anxious. But like how decisive she was so scared, and you could tell, but she was so decisive about exactly what she needed to do. Accidentally triggering the horde, but then just getting ready to blow up the entire thing and waiting to blow it up until like most of them had arrived into the building. Like that's fucking brave, because you could just set it on fire before they get there, because it's done. But to the point that like looking the zombie in the eyes and feeling like there was some sort of, it wasn't consciousness, because it wasn't like there was a man in there making a decision, but it was, it was the fungus making the decision, like carpenter ants. And like that slow acceptance of what's about to be absolutely like the most horrifying thing that you could possibly imagine, because you've spent 20 years avoiding it and surviving it. And then it becomes this slow, like gentle and horrible reality to you. And then she still is trying to like click the lighter on the side. Like I was like bawling because how brave, like the bravest thing that a person could do in that scenario, I think. Like not only are you kamikazing yourself, but like to accept
Mm-hmm.
invasion in your last moments. Like,
yeah, I did question that moment. I mean, it's a beautifully horrific scene, and it's really well shot. I did question whether it was needed.
I think it makes sense, and I'm willing to defend it after you say your point.
Thank you. I did question whether it was needed because she could have moved off, she could have moved to the side, she could have slowly backed away. There's a lot of things, but it is a beautiful moment where there's this acknowledgement and a recognition between the infected, the two infected in that case. And I do think it's a really well shot moment, but I don't know whether it's particularly needed. But yeah.
So my counterpoint to that,
and defend it.
why I think needed feels strongly, but I can validate why. And I think it's even just stripping it down to like the practicalities of it. If she were to scream, if she were to act like some sort of conscious human in that moment, it's not like they're aware that she's infected yet, like she's not a zombie yet, she's not a part of the hive mind. And so if she were to start like screaming, then like it would have immediately meant that the horde was all on her, and who knows if she would have been able to light the building on fire at that point.
No, I get that.
Like I think as well, I think in that moment, again, the more human aspect to it is that shock, being paralyzed by fear, but only being able, she's like, this is my one fucking task that I have to do before I die. Like, I think that being paralyzed while accepting your death and having to accept it in the most horrifying way makes a lot of sense. And it adds a lot of gravity to what is already a really, really emotional end of life sacrifice. So I think I prefer it. Because it was Fedra that killed her in the other one, right?
I think so.
It was gunshots.
Fedra, yeah. Then on to the biggest change. I mean, that's one big change, but the biggest change in probably the entire season, maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but it is probably the biggest change.
I don't know that you can change anything else that significantly.
The third episode, it's the whole part of the game that's in Bill's town, it's called, where the area that
like he
sets up with all these booby traps and all that sort of stuff. So this episode starts off with Ellie and Joel making their way from the State House, and Joel giving some sort of explanation as to what happened in those early days with Fedra taking over and with people being murdered by Fedra and so on. And then it does a flashback to this moment where that's actually happening, and you see this guy that's in his bunker.
What did I call him as well? Like it wasn't survivalist. It was something very diminutive.
I think he calls himself a survivalist.
He did, but I called him something like a bunker psycho or something like that. Yeah. But because I got really excited at Bill is such a fun character in the game, anyways.
But it makes sense that Bill, the character that we met in the game, it makes sense that he was probably like a bunker psycho.
100%. 100%. Like that was an element that I hadn't given thought before, but there is no other version of him that makes sense when you see the town that he builds in the game, or that he fortifies in the game. And so I thought that when the episode started, I had heard tell of people being upset that Bill was gay, and I was like, well, that's fucking dumb. But I when it started in the episode,
never mind the fact that he is clearly gay in the game.
I
mean, it two
it's
moments,
subtle, but it's
the letters
clear.
From Frank and Ellie finding the porn rag.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
there was like a couple other moments in there that it made it make sense. Like he referred to him as his partner and things like that. And it made sense, especially in the context of the time that this was delivered. And so I don't know. I don't find it surprising that Bill was gay in the show at all. Right. What I did find surprising was that it was going to be the best example of gay love I think I've ever seen on TV. Granted, it was given time to be the best example. It was a full episode of this arc or of this entire series, and I cannot fathom another way to see it, because when it first came in, I was like, oh my God, how funny. We're going to get like this fun little 5-minute intro on like Bill being a psycho. And then we're going to meet Frank and we're going to see them break up and like whatever. And it's going to be, and there's going to be a horrible tragic ending with Frank because he kills himself in the game.
As a reminder, we do find his body in the game.
Yeah.
And
it's so sad.
And they do pay homage to that to that relationship.
They do,
because
Frank, you pointed this out, and
Frank
really
leaves these letters going, man, I hate your guts, I'm so glad to be out of here, and that sort of thing. And they have that moment that just directly after their first love scene, that it's it fast forward 3 years, and he's like, I'm out
he's
of
like,
here.
fuck you. Yeah, and like just I do love that they still had that element of what the breakup could have looked like. And so like, but then at that point, like, I didn't know what was coming, and I was so like, these are thoughts that came in retrospect, of course, but like, I'm so glad that it wasn't just another exhibit of a one-dimensional, the apocalypse is horrible scenario. Like, it was these two men that found each other in the most impossible circumstance and managed to live in peace, relative peace, for 20 years in the most uncanny circumstances. And I find like that to also be such a beautiful recognition of humanity. Yeah. Like, to see that there could be that lightness, that just, that beauty can still exist in the most impossible time. Yeah. And oh my God, like you can ask Ned. I was like nearly inconsolable at the end of the episode, but it made so much sense to me. It made so much sense to me, and like, I would have been more inconsolable if Bill hadn't also killed himself, because like, that was my immediate thought. I was like, if Ned was sick in that scenario and he had requested that he's dying, there is no version of life that I would want to live in that world, especially where where I'm still there and he's not. Like, the life that we curated for 20 years and then helping him kill himself as if we're in fucking Switzerland and then just living after that, like, that's not possible to me. And so I would have done exactly what Bill did. Yeah. Like, exactly. And I love that there was that human moment between Bill and Frank where he had come out with glasses of wine and they drunk that and they had their lovely dinner or whatever. And then he came out with the new bottle and crushed it and showed him the crushed pills and put it all in whatever and only gave him the medicine there, like, visually. But then, like, Frank called him on and he was like, there was stuff in the other bottle, and he was like, enough to kill a horse. And it was like, that was so Bill. To brook no argument, be like, there's...
And Frank would like, I can't support this.
But it's incredibly romantic.
Incredibly romantic.
And I do love, and I love that there's like a little nod to Romeo and Juliet there, but like in a beautiful way. Yeah. Like, not in a terrifying way like Romeo and Juliet is. But...
I mean, the last thing that I want to say on that show is the acting. Bill
Nick Offerman
blew
me away.
He
beyond all reason.
What an incredible portrayal of Bill. Frank's actor was amazing as well, and Bill and Ellie are good in it as well. But the subtlety in that acting, in that role, to play a character that, I mean, we live in a world where someone like Bill, this bunker psycho, is very rarely shown with any empathy.
Absolutely.
in media.
They're shown very one note.
Speaking as two liberal people, that type of character is normally the villain. Yeah. And they show him to be human, to be, can grow, can change, just meet the right person, and he meets the right person in a hole in the apocalypse. Yeah. And it's just beautiful, and I really appreciate that the show showed the empathy to a character like Bill. I think that's really
really tasteful.
A great choice for the show.
There was this one specific moment that like made me instantly just burst into tears when one, it was beautiful, like superseding expectations that, Bill was the one that could play piano, and it was so lovely. But then like that, like, 2-line conversation to just have an understanding that, like, we're gay, like, we each are gay, and it is safe to actually express that together in this space, in this apocalypse where, hate crimes are normal. And like, when Frank went to kiss Bill, and Bill had that little like catch of breath, like relief at being shown intimacy. Like, that's one of the most beautiful things that I can like imagine.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the intimacy since the since the apocalypse.
No, it was obviously
started.
his whole life.
It was his whole life.
Yeah.
And they do make that clear. That,
yeah.
They say that when they go to bed. It's just it's a really beautiful moment. You kind of forget that you're watching The Last of Us, actually.
100%.
Like, it's just this
and I think that's the
love story.
point.
Yeah,
it's meant to just showcase that like beautiful things were still happening, even in this desolate world. And I just it was probably my favorite episode of TV I've ever watched.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, we can keep naming, but like the strawberry scene, just absolutely beautiful.
And like the really human moment with Frank where they were about to then like make love, and he was like, none of the strawberries, and they laughed. But it was like like that's so like I don't know anyone who's watching this if you can empathize, but like that's such a like an established relationship thing. Being like, we can have this hot moment, but like maybe practically on a different setting.
I think that's the testament to the show, to that particular episode as well, right? It's not just that it's the, as you say, it is probably the best depiction of a gay couple that I've seen on TV. It's also one of the best depictions of a couple that I've seen on TV. Like, because
it's like I think that lends to it being one of the best depictions of gay love, because it's just fucking love. Like, it's just what intimacy looks like when it's grown and cultivated over varying levels of hardship for decades. Like, it's just.
Yeah, and that's what he says,
so
right?
human.
Frank says that I've had a lot of terrible days with you, Bill.
Yeah.
But I've had more good ones than bad ones.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, that's, most relationships, right?
I also love, like, and I didn't really think about this until just now, I love the respect that their death is given. Like, they chose this. It was premeditated. They got married the day that they died, which is heartbreaking and beautiful and perfect balance. But they, like, when Ellie and Joel show up and the house
beautiful soundtrack of Oliver Arnold's, one of my favorite composers, playing through the whole thing, really beautiful.
And when Ellie and Joel show up and they read the letter, like, there's not like a moment where you go and look at the bodies. Like, that is just an accepted truth, and Bill's last requests are heeded. And
Don't come in.
Yeah, he was like, we've left the window open. Please don't come look at us.
And I pointed it out to Ellie that's actually the for anyone watching the YouTube, that's the actual starting screen. I mean, it's an homage to it, I think. Maybe it wasn't purposely done, but I felt that it was an homage to that.
I mean, in my head, that is the homage.
Well, I was going to get you to ask me about what I was doing outside of gaming, and I was going to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks, but
we can't.
I don't think we can.
This is the Last of Us episode, and this is not the Last of Us episode.
I'm not sure that I can follow up this conversation with Star Trek Lower Decks. I mean, I definitely will talk about it on a future episode, but I think this is probably a good point to wrap up this conversation. Yeah. I've got to say, I mean, I've been waiting a long time to play this with you, and for anyone out there that plays games with their significant other, this has been a really, really special few weeks being able to actually share this with you at last. And now the community gets to like talk to Ellie about The Last of Us and not be worried about
me kicking you out of the group.
For sure. But
I
no
will
DLC or no Last of Us 2 talk, please.
Until I say otherwise.
Yes.
I will
and
kick
Last
you
of Us
out.
2 will probably be next year, early next year, but next year.
Yeah.
We need a bit of a break.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, God. I could talk about it for even more hours. We will be returning to these subjects because I will continue watching the series, and I will have so much more to say, I'm sure. And so many more revelations about the game itself as it marinades in my brain like a beautiful chicken breast. But yeah, I'm at my emotional end here. Like, I can't. It's done something to me.
Emotional. A marinated chicken breast. All right.
Anyways, Thank you so much for watching or for listening, because we've now rectified all of our podcast issues, and you can listen to this as well if you need round two of it.
We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and
everywhere else
that
you get your pods.
Pick up your podcasts. So
we're Pocket Cast fans here.
Yeah, we're big Pocket Cast fans here. You should check it out.
But thank you so much for watching, listening, subscribing, liking, commenting, whatever your experience is. Don't forget to join the Discord and stay up to date with all things late to the game on this channel or in the community Discord, and the links will be below. Until next time, bye.
Bye.